Imagine walking into my own home, climbing the stairs after 25 years of marriage, and hearing a sound from my bedroom that was enough to end everything. It wasn't just laughter. It was her voice, soft, breathless, intimate, saying my husband's name in a way no future daughter-in-law should ever say it. In that single second, before I even touched the door, I knew. Trust, loyalty, love, gone. This is the story of the day I caught my husband with my son's future wife. And how that betrayal didn't just break my marriage. It reshaped my entire life. The day started like any other. That's the strange thing about life-changing moments. They rarely announce themselves. There was no storm in the sky. No bad feeling in my chest. No warning whisper telling me to turn around. I had spent the afternoon at my sister Claire's house. She'd been reorganizing her garage, and I volunteered to help because that's who I've always been. The helper. The one who shows up. The dependable one. We laughed about old high school memories. We complained about our aching backs. We talked about my son's upcoming wedding. I remember smiling when I said her name. I remember saying, "She's going to make such a beautiful bride." I had no idea. When I pulled into my driveway around 5:30 p.m., I noticed my husband's car parked outside. That was normal. What wasn't normal was the second car behind it. Her car. For a moment, I actually felt happy. I thought maybe she came by to surprise us. Maybe she wanted to show me something about the wedding dress. Maybe she brought pastries from that little bakery she loved. I walked to the front door, completely unaware that I was walking toward the end of my marriage. The house was quiet when I stepped inside. Too quiet. No television. No music. No footsteps. I called out, "Hello?" casually, expecting one of them to answer. Nothing. I set my purse down on the entry table. That's when I saw them, her beige heels sitting neatly beside the staircase. The same heels I had helped her pick out for our anniversary dinner 2 months earlier. My stomach tightened, but I told myself I was being dramatic. Maybe they were upstairs discussing something. Maybe my son was here too. I started climbing the stairs. Halfway up I heard it. Her voice. Soft. Low. Intimate. Not conversational. Not casual. She whispered my husband's name slowly, like it meant something private. Something sacred. The kind of tone that doesn't belong between a father-in-law and a future daughter-in-law. My body froze. Every instinct in me knew. Before I saw anything, before I opened the door, I knew. But there's a strange denial that happens in moments like that. Your brain tries to protect you. It says, "There's another explanation. You're misunderstanding." I reached the top step. My hand felt cold on the hallway wall. Their bedroom door, my bedroom door, was slightly closed. I could hear movement now. A soft rustle of sheets. And then she laughed quietly again. Not the laugh she used at family dinners. This one was different. Private. I pushed the door open, and my entire world shattered in complete silence. They froze. Both of them. My husband, the man I had built a life with for 25 years, and my son's fiancée, the young woman I had welcomed into my family, were in my bed. There was no confusion. No misunderstanding. Just truth. Ugly, undeniable truth. He said my name first. Softly, almost gently, like I was the one who had walked in at the wrong time. She gasped and pulled the sheet to her chest. Her face drained of color. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't throw anything. I just stood there. "How long?" I heard myself ask. My voice sounded calm. Too calm. Like it didn't belong to me. He sat up quickly. "It's not what you think." I laughed. A sharp, hollow sound that didn't even feel human. "Then what is it?" I asked. He couldn't answer. She started crying. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for this to happen. Affairs don't slip and fall into existence. They grow in secrecy. They survive on lies. And suddenly it hit me. This wasn't just betrayal as a wife. This was betrayal as a mother. My son trusted them. He loved her. He respected his father. And the two people he trusted most were destroying him without him even knowing. I turned around and walked out of the room. Behind me, I heard him calling my name. I heard her crying harder. But I didn't stop. I walked downstairs, grabbed my car keys, and stepped outside. The evening air felt colder than it should have. I sat in the driver's seat, closed the door, and stared straight ahead. My hands were shaking so badly I had to place them on my lap. After a few minutes, he came outside. He knocked on the window. I didn't move. He opened the passenger door and sat down. Please, he said. Let's talk. Talk. I whispered. About what? It didn't mean anything. I turned to look at him. Then why risk everything? I asked. He had no answer. And that's when something inside me shifted permanently. Not anger. Not rage. Clarity. I realized I would never look at him the same way again. I drove away that night. I didn't pack a bag. I didn't leave a note. I just drove until I found a small hotel 15 minutes away. When the woman at the front desk asked how long I'd be staying, I said, I'm not sure. And I meant it in more ways than one. The next morning, I woke up in that small hotel room, staring at the ceiling, unable to breathe. Sleep had abandoned me entirely. My mind kept replaying the moment, the way her voice had sounded, the way he looked when he realized I was there. Every detail burned into my memory. Then my phone buzzed. It was my son. Mom, what's going on? Dad said you left and won't answer him. Are you okay? My chest tightened. My stomach dropped. How do you explain to your child that the two people he trusted most have betrayed everything sacred? That his father, the man who taught him right from wrong, had crossed a line that can never be uncrossed? I stared at the screen for a long time. I deleted what I wrote, rewrote it, deleted again. Finally, I typed, "We need to talk. Just you and me." We agreed to meet at a small coffee shop near his apartment later that afternoon. When I saw him, my heart sank all over again. He looked so small, not like my grown son, but like the little boy who had once clung to me after his first heartbreak. I wanted to hold him, to tell him everything would be okay, but I knew it wouldn't. "What happened?" he asked the second I sat down. His voice was low, cautious. His eyes were wide, afraid. I took a deep breath. There's no easy way to say this. I came home yesterday and found your father with her. He blinked. He stared at me as if my words didn't compute. With her. I nodded. Slowly. My hand shook slightly as I held my coffee cup. Yes. I watched him process this. The color drained from his face. His jaw tightened. I saw confusion, disbelief, heartbreak, all in a single moment. "No," he whispered finally, almost to himself. "That's not possible." "I'm so sorry," I said. And I meant it. But I also knew there was no apology big enough for what had been done. He got up suddenly, pacing a few steps before sitting back down. "Did you misunderstand? Maybe it wasn't." "No," interrupta shuffly. "I didn't misunderstand." He ran both hands through his hair, the same way his father always did when he didn't know what to say. "How long?" "I don't know," I admitted. He nodded slowly, jaw clenched. He looked like he was holding back tears, anger, and disbelief all at once. "I trusted them," he said, barely above a whisper. "Both of them." I reached across the table and took his hand. He didn't pull away. He didn't squeeze back either. But the silence between us was heavy, filled with shared grief. "I never wanted you to find out like this," I said. "I wanted to protect you." He let out a bitter laugh. "Like there's a good way to find out?" Over the next few hours, we talked. Or maybe we just sat there, exchanging fragmented sentences, trying to process what had happened. His father had already called, sent messages, tried to explain himself. My son didn't respond, and I didn't blame him. Later that day, he confronted her. I didn't witness it, but he told me afterwards. She admitted everything. Months of secrecy, emotional closeness, crossing lines she should never have crossed. She said it just happened. That she didn't mean to hurt anyone. But actions have consequences. Betrayal doesn't excuse itself with an apology. He ended the engagement immediately. He moved out of the apartment they shared. He stopped answering his father's calls. And as for me, I went back to the house once to collect a few things: clothes, photos, important papers. I walked through rooms that used to feel warm and familiar. Now everything seemed smaller, heavier, contaminated with memories I didn't want to remember. He followed me from room to room, trying to talk, trying to reason. "We can fix this," he said. "We've been through worse." I shook my head, calmly. "We haven't. This doesn't have to end us." "It already did," I replied. I left before nightfall. That was the first time in years I slept without him in the house. In that quiet hotel room, I let the tears fall I had been holding back all day. They came in waves: sorrow, rage, betrayal, exhaustion. It felt endless. The days after that coffee shop meeting blurred together. My son went silent, retreating into himself, and I didn't push him. I knew he needed space to process what had happened, what his father and fiancée had done. And I needed space too. Every time my phone buzzed with a message from him, my stomach tightened. I wanted to scream at him to respond, to tell me how he was feeling, but I forced myself to wait. Silence was better than forcing a conversation that wasn't ready to happen. I checked into therapy the following week. I had avoided it for years, convinced I could handle everything on my own. But this was different. This wasn't something I could fix with logic, with patience, with time. This was something that had shattered the foundation of my life, and I needed help to pick up the pieces. The therapist didn't offer magic words or instant relief. She didn't say, "It'll be fine soon." Instead, she let me feel. She let me cry, scream, even laugh at the absurdity of it all. Slowly, I began to untangle the knot of betrayal, guilt, and shame that had tied itself around my chest. Meanwhile, my son started therapy too. I wasn't there for the sessions, but I could see the change in him. The first few weeks, he barely looked me in the eye. He mumbled his words, half hiding behind his hoodie. But over time, the walls he had built began to soften. We started talking again. Not about what had happened, not at first, but about normal things: school, work, memories from childhood. And slowly, we returned to the kind of relationship that didn't feel like walking on eggshells around grief. The divorce came next. He tried to fight it at first, tried to convince me to reconsider, tried to blame the entire situation on stress, on midlife crises, on circumstances. But the truth was simple: trust was gone. And once trust is gone, nothing else matters. Dividing assets was messy. There were arguments over money, over furniture, over photographs. But I stayed calm. I kept my focus on the future and my son's. I refused to let his selfishness steal my peace. I moved into a small apartment, furnished it with soft, calming colors, plants on the windowsills, and photos of happier times. The first night I slept there alone, I felt a strange mix of relief and grief. Relief that I was free, grief that I had lost so much. I started a morning routine, waking up at sunrise, walking in the park, drinking tea on my balcony, letting the world wake up around me while I tried to wake up to myself. I signed up for yoga, joined a book club, and started volunteering at a local shelter. Little by little, life began to feel normal again. Not perfect, not untouched by the past, but mine. There were nights I cried. There were moments I questioned whether I had done the right thing, whether I should have tried harder to save my marriage. But then I would remember her voice in my bedroom, my husband whispering her name, and I would know. I had done the only thing I could. I walked away. Months later, I ran into my ex at a grocery store. He tried to speak to me, to explain, to apologize. I nodded politely. I didn't want to fight. I didn't want to relive it. And deep down, I didn't need his approval or forgiveness. I had found something far more important: my own strength. My son and I grew closer than we had been in years. We shared dinners, weekend walks, and quiet evenings talking about everything and nothing. We laughed together again. We cried together too. But most importantly, we rebuilt trust, not with him, not with anyone else, but with life itself. I realized something crucial during this time. Betrayal doesn't define you. Other people's choices don't determine your worth. Pain doesn't have to destroy you. It can teach you, shape you, make you stronger. I still carry scars. Some mornings, grief hits like a wave I wasn't expecting. But those waves no longer sweep me away. I stand firm. I breathe. I continue. The night I opened that bedroom door, I thought my life had ended. But it hadn't. It had changed direction. And sometimes, the hardest endings become the most important beginnings. I learned that I could survive heartbreak, betrayal, and loss. I learned that I could rebuild a life that felt whole again. I learned that my son and I could be each other's anchors when the world around us seemed to crumble. And most importantly, I learned that even in the darkest moments, there is a way forward. A way to reclaim your life, your dignity, and your peace. I don't need him. I don't need her. I need me. And that is enough. The weeks turned into months. Each day felt like a small victory, and a quiet reminder of how much had been lost. Waking up alone in my apartment became normal, but I never took it lightly. I made coffee in the mornings and watched the sun rise over the quiet streets. The world seemed gentle at that hour, indifferent to betrayal, indifferent to heartbreak, and I clung to that gentleness like a lifeline. I threw myself into new routines. Yoga became my sanctuary. The stretching, the deep breathing, the quiet focus on the present moment. It reminded me that I was still here, still alive, still capable of moving forward. Walking in the park each morning, I noticed the subtle changes in nature. The buds on the trees, the soft songs of the birds, the way the sunlight made the pavement glimmer. Life was still happening, even when mine felt shattered. I joined a book club, mostly for the company and distraction at first. But I discovered it wasn't just distraction, it was connection. I listened to other women share their lives, their struggles, their small triumphs, and I realized I wasn't alone. Pain is universal. Betrayal is not unique. But recovery, as I learned, is personal. Each of us rebuilds in our own way. My son and I continued to rebuild too. At first he was quiet, reserved, hesitant to trust the world again. But he was my anchor and I was his. We laughed together sometimes. Awkwardly at first, the kind of laugh that felt fragile and fleeting. But over time, the laughter grew stronger, more natural. We shared dinners, movie nights, and even small adventures, a weekend hike, a visit to a local museum. Each moment, each conversation, was a brick in the foundation of trust we were building together. I reflected often on the day I opened that bedroom door. It had felt like the end, but it had been the beginning of a different life. A life I never would have imagined for myself. I remembered the way her voice had sounded, the soft intimacy that had cut through my heart like a knife. And yet, that voice became the signal I needed to start over, to reclaim what I had lost. I allowed myself to cry sometimes, not out of weakness, but out of release. The grief I carried was heavy, and it needed to be expressed. I cried in my apartment, in the park, even during therapy sessions. But each tear also reminded me of resilience. Each wave of sorrow was followed by a small step forward. I learned to be selfish in a healthy way. I took myself on trips I had always wanted to take, but never prioritized. I explored parts of the city I had ignored for years. I met new people, friends, mentors, even a few casual acquaintances. I didn't seek romance immediately. That part of my life felt fragile, and I respected its need for time. But I allowed myself to laugh at jokes, to enjoy company, to feel curiosity and excitement again. Sometimes the memories would come back unbidden. The sound of her voice, the image of him frozen when I walked in, the betrayal, all of it, returned in waves. I didn't fight it anymore. I acknowledged it, let it wash over me, and then let it pass. That was the difference between living in the pain and moving forward with it. I began writing again, something I had abandoned for years while managing family, responsibilities, and a life I thought was stable. Writing became my therapy, my voice, my way to process the chaos. I wrote about the betrayal, the heartbreak, the moments of anger and despair, and slowly, I wrote about hope. Each word, each sentence was a reclamation of myself. I even started volunteering at a local shelter, helping women who were navigating difficult relationships, betrayals, or personal crises. It was humbling, grounding, and healing. Listening to their stories reminded me that human resilience is extraordinary, and that while heartbreak can shatter us, it can also forge strength we didn't know we had. By the 6-month mark, I felt a quiet sense of pride. I wasn't fully healed, but I was living fully again. I had nights where I still cried, but I also had mornings where I woke with excitement, anticipation, and gratitude for being alive. My son and I were closer than ever, bonded not just by family, but by shared survival and understanding. I realized that rebuilding isn't linear. There are setbacks, moments of weakness, memories that hit too hard. But recovery isn't about perfection, it's about persistence, about continuing, even when the path is painful. And slowly, I began to understand that I didn't just survive betrayal. I emerged from it stronger, wiser, and more attuned to my own worth. I didn't need approval from him. I didn't need reconciliation. I needed peace. And I found it. Over the next year, life slowly began to feel like mine again. I started keeping a journal, not just of the pain, but of the moments that reminded me I was still living, still breathing, still capable of joy. I wrote about the mornings when sunlight spilled across my apartment floor, warming my coffee cup. I wrote about the small victories, making my own decisions, laughing freely, choosing myself. Sometimes memories would come back in flashes. I would remember our family dinners, the sound of my son laughing as he told a joke I had long forgotten. I would remember the vacations we took, the way my husband held my hand while walking on the beach. Those were painful at first, but I began to see them differently, not as reminders of betrayal, but as reminders of love that had existed once, and of my capacity to feel deeply. I realized something important during those quiet moments. The betrayal didn't define me. My worth had never depended on his choices, nor on her actions. I had been strong before, and I would be strong again. I was the one who would write the next chapters of my life. I took my son on little adventures, a weekend in the mountains, a visit to a lake we used to go to when he was small. We laughed. We argued playfully. We shared stories about school, friends, and dreams for the future. And sometimes, late at night, I would hear him breathing in his room and feel a deep gratitude for the bond we had rebuilt. I reconnected with old friends I had drifted from during my marriage. I attended art classes and book readings, discovering new passions I had neglected. I allowed myself small indulgences, a new dress, a quiet dinner by myself at a little cafe, a walk through the city at sunset. I began to appreciate the beauty in ordinary life, in moments I had once overlooked. Therapy continued to help me untangle the complicated threads of anger, grief, and confusion. I learned that healing isn't about forgetting or forgiving. Healing is about reclaiming your life, setting boundaries, and understanding that some people are only meant to be part of your story for a chapter, not the entire book. And slowly, I began to forgive myself. I forgave myself for trusting him. I forgave myself for believing she would be family. I forgave myself for thinking life would always follow the path I imagined. Forgiveness wasn't for them, it was for me, to let go of the weight I had carried, to open space for new beginnings. There were still moments when grief hit unexpectedly. A song on the radio, the sight of a happy couple, even the memory of her voice in my bedroom. All of it could bring tears. But each time, I reminded myself that tears were not weakness. They were evidence of life, of feeling, of having survived something unimaginable. I began traveling again. I visited places I had dreamed of for years. Small towns, beaches, museums, even quiet retreats in the countryside. Each journey reminded me that life is vast, filled with opportunities and experiences beyond the walls that had once contained my pain. I learned to love the quiet moments, the early morning walks, the pages of a book I couldn't put down, the taste of coffee in a new cafe. These moments became my sanctuary. They reminded me that even after betrayal, even after heartbreak, beauty still exists in the world. One evening, a year after the day I opened that bedroom door, I sat on my balcony with a cup of tea. My son had gone out with friends, laughing as he left. The city lights twinkled below, and the cool breeze brushed my face. I thought about everything, the betrayal, the heartbreak, the months of pain and rebuilding. And I smiled. Not a fake smile, not a forced smile, a real smile. One that came from the understanding that I had survived. I had grown. I had reclaimed my life. I realized that betrayal, no matter how deep, cannot destroy the essence of who you are. It can challenge you, hurt you, even change your path. But it cannot take away your strength, your courage, or your ability to love and live again. I thought about my son, sleeping peacefully upstairs, and the bond we had rebuilt. I thought about the life I had created for myself, one filled with purpose, peace, and resilience. And I knew in that moment that I was free. Free from betrayal, free from fear, free from the weight of other people's choices. I didn't need them anymore. I didn't need closure from him. I didn't need apology from her. I only needed me, and for the first time in a long time, I felt whole. Because surviving the unimaginable doesn't just make you stronger, it makes you unstoppable. I am the author of my story, the architect of my life, and from the ashes of heartbreak, I have built something unbreakable. If like this story, please subscribe for more stories. Take care, goodbye.